Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, trying a little experiment here. Obviously, you can see that for this video anyways, if I release it as a video, I am very much in the left part of the frame. So we'll see how this goes. I need to mount my mount a little bit differently to frame me up a little bit better. But this is what we got for now. Maybe add a light if I can add one safely. I've been thinking about ways to do podcasts efficiently. And with 2 kids, for those of you who don't know, I had another child. Well, my wife had our child in May of 2024. So as of recording, we are a few months into life with an almost 4-year-old and a 3 or 4 months old, about 4 months old by now. Is my second son. So 4-month-old and a 3-year-old. That's what we got going on at the house currently. So that's fun. And life goes on in other ways too. Work is going great. Work is going awesomely for me personally. But it is between work and 2 kids at this point. It's becoming hard just to sit down and do an episode of Geek Therapy Radio. So I've been thinking of ways to kind of where I can do that between different stops, between picking up kids from the school, between going to work at the museum, between coming home from work in the museum. It's kind of tight. So a while back, a good friend of mine, Colin, from This Does Not Compute, I need to be honest, I don't know if he still does podcast, the This Does Not Compute podcast, where he used to cruise around. I think it was in a Subaru, and he cruised around doing his podcast. It was really cool kind of format. I thought, you do what you got to do when you can do it. I'm gonna make sure not to look at the camera too much here while I'm driving for safety reasons. But I just thought, hey, you do what you got to do. He was doing it in the car while he was running errands or doing this and that, and I thought maybe that can work for me too. So to explain the technicals of what I've got set up, at least for this video, obviously I've got my camera here mounted to the glass with a suction cup mount, but I'm using my DJI mic. I've got the Gen 1 DJI mic, and I've got it clipped to the sun visor. It's just out of frame here because I can't get my phone mount to show it all for you right here, but I do have it clipped to the visor, the sunshade of my vehicle, which is a 2017 Chevy Bolt with a B, if anyone cares. But yeah, it's aimed kind of more or less down towards my mouth. So I feel like this is kind of the best car audio that you can possibly get, with the caveat that it is vehicle audio. So obviously I'm driving down the road, I'm using my turn signals like a competent human being. So you're gonna be able to hear probably the clicks of the turn signal, you're gonna hear the road noise of the tires. But what you won't hear, because this is an electric vehicle, is the hum of the engine whirring away, a 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, what have you. But that does mean that you will hear road noise a little more. I think that's one of the things about EVs. I know this is kind of old news by now. I mean, it's a decade old news by now. But yeah, there's no gasoline engine in a electric vehicle, obviously, so you don't have that engine noise, but that just means that you hear all the other noise a lot, not a lot more. You just notice it because the engine isn't drowning it out anymore. So depending on the road surfaces, it'll sound a little bit different. I'm gonna probably rely on the noise canceling, the AI noise canceling, quite a bit in DaVinci Resolve. No matter how I release this podcast, if I release it audio only or I release it alongside this video, which by the way I think is only being recorded in 720p also, I'm going to use DaVinci Resolve's amazing suite of audio tools. That's one reason I love DaVinci Resolve so much, is because I come from a background in audio, and DaVinci Resolve's audio tools are robust. One of the awesome tools that DaVinci Resolve has, and I'm sure Adobe has it too, and I'm sure Final Cut has their version of it as well. But one of the awesome tools is this AI noise canceling, and it doesn't, so the thing is, like, it will save takes. So that's the good thing about AI noise canceling, is it will let you use otherwise possibly unusable audio. When you're running something through AI noise cancellation, it doesn't make the tone of someone's voice sound better. Actually, it makes the tone of voice sound different. It affects EQ. It kind of it can have adverse effects on the human voice as a human voice. But yes, it will mostly eliminate background noise. The heavier the background noise, the louder the background noise, or you could just call it the noise floor for any of my audio people listening right now. The higher the noise floor. So if you're at a museum or you're at a crowd and there's lots of people cheering and you're trying to have a conversation, the AI is really good at isolating your voice from that. But since the noise floor of the crowd is so loud, that it modulates the human voice. It modulates whatever you're trying to isolate. So it makes the audio usable that would otherwise have to be thrown away, but it doesn't clarify. Like, it doesn't make the audio extra crispy. It just it makes the voices a little more muffled, but you can still hear the voices and only the voices. So anyways, I'm going to see how well this DJI mic coupled with DaVinci Resolve's noise reduction does. The Gen 2 DJI mics have built-in noise reduction, which is really cool. I have not tested out the Gen 2 DJI mics. A buddy of mine did get the DJI mics, another videographer, DJI mic Gen 2s. And he had some issues with it. A lot of people, most people, anybody who bought the Gen 2 DJI mics right out of the box, opening day, so to speak, had issues, had some audio issues, had some EQing issues. It just didn't sound right. I think from one transmitter to the other, it kind of sounds a little bit different when they plug in their certain lavs into the port of the DJI mic Gen 2. It had some weird effects going to it. Maybe not enough gain, maybe too much gain. It was tough to kind of dial in if plugging certain like Sony lavs into it. Don't quote me directly on that. Lavs, I think the issue in that regard kind of rested in whether or not the lav could use or required phantom power from the pack. And since there's different variables between different lavs on the power requirements and whatnot, then the DJI mic kind of sounded different plugging in different lavs and gave some lavs a lot of problems. My friend who's a videographer is a Sony guy. He works with a lot of Sony equipment, and he was having problems with some of his Sony stuff. I think his Sennheisers also gave him a little bit of guff. I gotta try to get out of this lane. I'm stuck behind a garbage truck and there's a Bronco behind me just right up on my bumper. Like, dude, going as fast as I can. Nice blinker. Thanks for letting us know what you're doing there. Anyways, sorry, I'm road raging here in Houston, Texas. So yeah, the DJI mic Gen 2s had some issues when they first released. They have since come out with firmware updates that have largely, I think, cured most, if not all of those issues. I know that as of recording right now, DJI came out with a recent firmware update a couple weeks ago for the Gen 2 mics, and the users were just blown away up this. Wow, this fixes so many things, and it sounds really good. One of the things that the new update for the DJI mic Gen 2s did was re-EQ'd. It added a different EQ curve to the lav, so right out of the lav, you had a nice scooped kind of EQ where you took out. You can just look at the EQ. It looks like they took out the low mids and the upper mids. Well, the mid-mids. So they took out around 300 hertz. It looks like to me 800 hertz. Don't quote me on that. I'm not looking at the frequency graph right in front of me. But one way that I sweeten the sound of lav mics, and a lot of different mics for that regard, is for my own voice, I pull 4 to 6 dB from 300. I pull 4 to 6 dB usually from around 800 or around 1,000. That kind of gets rid of the kind of boxiness and the woodiness, if you will, of the human voice, of my voice, at least in a lav. So I think DJI added a similar EQ profile just baked into the audio recorded with the lav. So if you're running and gunning and you don't want to do a lot of EQing to your DJI mics, that kind of solves that. At the same time, as an audio guy, anytime you're adding, it's called a destructive edit to a destructive modification to an audio signal. Like when you add a compressor in line, like sometimes when you're tracking drums and sometimes when you're tracking loud vocals or whatever, you'll have a compressor acting in line into the audio recorder. So instead of recording something raw, unaffected at all, and then after the fact on playback, adjusting EQ and adjusting compression, if you had a compressor inline, then that compression is recorded. Like, you cannot undo that compression, more or less. I know there's expanders and different things, but it's baked in. It's called a destructive edit, really. So with DJI Mic Gen 2s, add this EQ curve. That's on the way in. So you better like how it sounds, and because that's the way it's going to sound. You can go back and EQ it maybe a little bit more to taste, but it's kind of like, I remember I mentioned this in a comment on YouTube somewhere, basically, that I thought it was really cool that they added that sweetened EQ curve to the lav, but at the same time, as an audio guy, I kind of want to be able to EQ to my taste. I want a flat signal, as flat as possible. I just want whatever the mic sounds like. I just want to record whatever the mic sounds like naturally, and then do my EQing. So I equated it to, in this comment, it's like if you're a videographer and you shoot in a log format. You're shooting in a flat color profile. You are just taking the pure data from the sensor, because then you want to go back into DaVinci Resolve, or you want to go back into Premiere, and you want to color grade to your heart's content, versus choosing a profile in camera, a color profile in camera, like vivid or natural or what have you, black and white, and you record it like that. That's just baked in. That's a destructive edit. You can't really undo that. You don't have nearly as much flexibility in post-production if you are recording video in a preset color profile or preset style. So it's the same thing with audio. When I'm recording audio, personally, I want just the flat response, just the whatever the microphone sounds like. I want to record that. No EQ, no compression, no delay, no reverb, anything like that. I just want the raw sound out of the mic, because I want to alter it later. I want the full flexibility of altering it later, after the fact, in post-production. So I was kind of on the fence about DJI's update. On the one hand, DJI mics are very much geared towards run and gun content creation. You just want it to sound good out of the microphone. And then you want to use a camera that just looks good right out of the camera, without adding a whole lot of color grading, without adding a whole lot of EQing to the audio. And that's what DJI did really well in the Gen 2. From the samples that I heard of the DJI Mic Gen 2, the new EQ profile is super duper usable. I mean, I would use it right out of the box and be quite happy with it. I might alter it just a teeny tiny bit, but if you're not going to EQ it, it sounds really good, baked in audio to whatever you're recording. And if you need to turn around something really quick and just upload it to social media, lickety split, and have it sound really nice, it's awesome in that regard. My only wish, and I have not checked on this, my only desire is that since DJI in the Gen 2 mics upgraded or enhanced the EQ right out of the mic pack, is there a way to set it to a flat profile? So when you go into audio settings, there's kind of the typical audio settings that you have in a lot of recorders, a lot of field recorders, a lot of microphones with built-in, solid state drives, what have you, that you can choose if you want a high pass filter, or another way of putting a low cut filter, where you want to get rid of rumble. So it like cuts off everything below 75 hertz, everything below 80 hertz or so. That's kind of how you reduce a lot of wind noise, is you do that you cut the rumble below 80 hertz, but you can also just leave it flat. So that's what I hope is for the EQ profile. I have not checked this because I don't have a set of Gen 2s myself, but I hope you can go in and maybe there's a tab on the screen under EQ, flat or enhanced, or whatever it is. I hope that exists. I don't know. I can't verify. I'm not using that right in front of me. I'm using the first gen DJI mics, which, by the way, I can't speak highly enough. This sounds like a big giant ad for DJI, but I cannot speak highly enough of DJI mics, period, whether it's Gen 1 or Gen 2. Here's a really good way to put it. If you're a carpenter, it's a hammer. That is how useful the tool is if you are a content creator. And I know that there's people that don't use DJI mics that are still running around using lavs or have different audio solutions, which on a set, on a predefined like a set where you can take a few hours or whatever days beforehand before a shoot to like really set things up, really get the shotgun mic going, really get things set up the best for the shoot. Yes, you're going to want to use your $1,000 Sennheiser shotgun mics. You're going to want to use your super expensive lavs. You're going to want to use the body tape to put the lav up in the hair or up in a hat or get it all set up just right. But if you're just a run and gun content creator, not just a run and gun, but you need mics that work in every situation, that sound great, that EQ great, that are so incredibly versatile in how you can apply these, the applications where you can apply these mics. If you were a videographer or a sound guy or both, which a lot of us are, DJI Mics, Gen 1 or Gen 2, are like a hammer if you're a carpenter. That's how useful, that's how game-changing. Once you get a set of DJI Mics, you will never go back to using your old way. You'll keep your old ways. You'll keep that gear around, like I said, for those shoots where you have a lot of prep time, a lot of setup time. You want to get the absolute best, most controlled audio possible. Yes, you'll keep the expensive gear for that. But just having in your bag along with your mirrorless, I almost said DSLR, mirrorless camera with your phone, both Android and Apple. It has the Lightning adapter for iDevices, Apple devices that still use that. It has the Type-C adapter for new Apple devices that use Type-C and all Android devices. So that's what I'm doing right now. I just have the receiver plugged right into the USB port of my Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, and it just plug, play, good to go. But I also can use the audio output, line output going into my mirrorless camera, my Lumix S5 2X. It's so incredibly versatile. It has 8 gigabytes of built-in memory, so you just hit record on the pack. No cameras, no nothing. Just hit record on the pack, and it's recording audio right into the device itself. You can use that as backup track. Like, let's say you are recording into camera. You can also have the mic pack recording in its own internal memory, so that you have just you have 2 audio files now. You have redundant. It's a safety thing. You can have a redundant audio file. Anyways, they're super virtual. They're super valuable. They're super useful. They cost about $300, give or take. I think you can get the Gen 1s for like $250, which is beyond a good value. Like I said, if you're gonna, the next $250 to $300 you spend, maybe $350 for the Gen 2s, the next few $100s you spend on your content creation setup should be a set of DJI mics, either the Gen 1s or the Gen 2s, and you'll be right as rain, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about and what everybody else who buys them is talking about. They are that good. DJI is not paying me at all. I wish they would. Speaking of that, because I didn't know really what I wanted to talk about today, I recorded a podcast a month ago. I recorded like an hour and a half of just me rambling, and I never posted it. But speaking of DJI stuff, and I'm not being a shill for DJI, just the mics are really good. I recently crashed. I know a lot of longtime listeners know that I crashed my Phantom 2 or Phantom 3 into a skyscraper, and there is a video of that floating around somewhere. Right into the Williams Tower here in Houston, Texas. This was a long time ago, just like 2014, 2015. But I had another crash of my Mavic 3 Pro. And it was another type of, well, it was a situation where Riker, my son, 3-year-old, had launched some foam rockets up onto the roof. And I said, well, I'll just blow them off with my drone. And I knew in my gut, I was like, Johnny, that's a really bad idea. You crashed another drone by trying the same thing with pine needles, by trying to blow pine needles off your mom's roof. Don't try to get things off the roof with your drone. That's what my gut said. But my brain was like, nah, I'll be super careful this time. So I put it into sport mode so that I could get rid of all the obstacle avoidance, because with obstacle avoidance, it was like, nah, you're not getting anywhere near this roof. It was doing an excellent job of taking my stupidity out of the equation. So anyways, I disabled all the obstacle avoidance by putting it into sport mode and just being very careful. And I was being very careful for 10 minutes or so, 5 minutes or so, and I was being careful the whole time. But what happens with drones, and I knew this was a bad idea, and I did it anyways. Shake your finger at me, slap on the wrist for me. it creates these vortices. The roof is angled and there's different walls and things like that. So the rotor wash from the quadcopter and a helicopter for that matter creates these vortices and these different aerodynamic effects that kind of want to suck the aircraft into whatever obstacle it is next to. It's like a magnetic feeling. It just kind of sucks itself into obstacles. So the DJI Mavic 3 Pro, with all the obstacle avoidance disabled, sucked itself into my angled roof, and it slid down the wall. I'm like, there it goes. There goes $2,200 tumbling to the ground. I can't believe I'm so stupid. I was thinking, am I still in warranty? Will they still honor warranty? When they undoubtedly said no, they checked the logs and see that I had obstacle avoidance disabled. I was still under warranty. The damage visually was not that bad. It was throwing these ESC motor errors, power delivery issues, send into DJI for service, and I was like, is it really that? Because it doesn't look too bad from the outside. It has some scuffs, but it looks rather fine. None of the arms are broken. The props were a little bit chipped on the end because they had smacked into the roof and the wall on the way down. I killed it. I killed the drone. I did the 2 sticks, down and inwards to shut it off, which it did, but it still went sliding down the wall and incurred its damage. So anyways, I contacted DJI to get a shipping label. I said, I'm just going to ship it to DJI and see what the estimate is. I got out. It cost a little bit of money. I think all in, it was like $130. Shipping it there, having the repairs done. The parts were super cheap. Parts are like $15 or whatever. But I got out of this mess for $130. And I'm telling y'all with drones, y'all know how bad it really could have been. Y'all know how I could have totaled it, man. If it was any worse than that, it could have easily been like $1,000 to fix, or I was budgeting in my head. I was like, okay, if it's anything below $500, I'll get this fixed. I was rationalizing, this is really stupid, but I need this drone. If it's anything below $500, I'll get it fixed. So when they came back with a quote $130, like, yeah, go for it. It was done so quick, y'all. Like, this obviously sounds like such a shilling for DJI. I promise you it's not that. It's just recent experiences I've had. So I sent the DJI Mavic Pro 3 into DJI, got it serviced, back in my hands for $130. Super quick, super clean. The drone came back so nicely and in a box that said drone only, that I thought, did they just send me a new drone? This looks so good. Is this just a new drone? Which I've heard does happen. To where it's kind of just easier on their end to just send you a new drone while they fix the minor ones on the one you sent in, and then they sell that drone refurbished for a few $100 less. So I was like, I should have put a little like ink somewhere, like a little dab of red paint somewhere inconspicuous to make sure that did y'all send me my drone back? I mean, the serial numbers have to match up, but can you change the serial number of the firmware like on the way out of the factory? How does this work? So anyways, I got my drone back. Oh, there's a dude playing guitar in the back of his car. That's awesome, man. I want to go jam with that guy. So got the drone back. $130 slap on the wrist reminder that listen to your gut. When you're flying your drone and you're in a situation that you're thinking, should I do this? This seems a little bit risky here. The answer is don't do it. I mean, that's just really all it boils down to, is listen to your gut. It's not worth it, especially with a very expensive drone. Part of me, when I was trying to fish Riker's foam darts off the roof, I was like, maybe I should use I have the Mini 4K. It's not the Mini 4 Pro. DJI is also victim to its own kind of naming scheme, but I got the DJI Mini 4K, which is like $300 all in, comes with the controller. You have to use it with your phone. But $300 for a 4K drone. It looks great. If someone was asking me right now, Johnny Hamburger, what drone do you recommend to somebody buy, first time drone buyer? Mini 4K. I mean, easy. It's $300. It's cheap enough to where you will crash it. You will definitely crash it, but you're only going to be out potentially $300 when you do crash it. Some say beginners should get drones that have lots of obstacle avoidance. here's my personal opinion, and I'll kind of start wrapping up the podcast with this because I got to go into work. I'm here at the museum, got to go to our Tuesday meeting. Anyways, I say get the cheap one with no obstacle avoidance. $300 is not cheap, but it's certainly cheaper than spending $700, $800, $900 on a Mini 3 Pro or a Mini 4 Pro or what are DJI's? I'm blanking out on their DJI Air series. So all the stuff that has obstacle avoidance is very expensive. It's very expensive, and you will still crash it even with obstacle avoidance, especially if it's your first drone. I'm on my 5th drone, and I just had another crash. It's been years since I've had a crash, but I did have another crash in my very expensive $2,200 Mavic 3 Pro. So you're going to crash it, and especially if you're beginning and you're learning, you're going to crash it. So some people say beginners should get the drones that have the obstacle avoidance because you won't crash it. And well, you still will crash it, and it will be out. You'll be out of a lot of money. Obstacle avoidance is not the end all be all. It is not a guaranteed. It helps, definitely helps, but it's not a guaranteed. It's not a guaranteed feature that will help you avoid crashes long term. You're going to get in a sticky situation even with obstacle avoidance. You will crash it, and you're going to have crash a $700 or $1,500 drone. So I say get the cheap one, the cheapest one, $300, no obstacle avoidance. You know that there's no obstacle avoidance, so you're going to learn safe practices. You're going to learn the best practices by not having a safety net on the cheap drone versus a false sense of security with a more expensive drone that you will still crash and be out $1,000. It's like driver's ed. They don't teach you how to use cruise control in driver's ed. You learn how to control the vehicle yourself in every different facet and every different situation. That's the same thing with a cheap drone with no obstacle avoidance. Is it teaches you best practices, best flying practices, because you are going to crash it eventually, and it just teaches you how to be as safe as possible and how to pilot the drone as safe as possible. Yeah, I guess this is called the DJI episode because that's all I talked about. Do you like this format? Because this might be the way that I go forward with these types of Geek Therapy Radio episodes. There is big news for Geek Therapy Radio. I'm still working out logistics. This is not the next iteration of Geek Therapy Radio necessarily. There are some really big things coming I wish I could talk about. I just have not laid down the first episode yet, so I don't want to talk about it too much while it doesn't exist yet. It's not in the can yet. But I'll keep these going as often as I can if y'all like it. Also, it's just therapeutic for me to talk. So anyways, thank you so much for listening. If I upload this, thank you so much for watching on Geek Therapy Radio YouTube channel. Follow me on all the socials. Talk to me on the socials. Thank you all for your birthday wishes. Y'all are emailing me from around the world. Thank you for your birthday wishes. Ed and who else? Why am I just blank? Enzo. Like all y'all from around the world have been sending me warm birthday wishes. It was my birthday a couple days ago. Thank y'all so much for that. But without further ado, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for listening. You are worthy of love. You're worthy of giving love. You're worthy of receiving love, and you are worthy of your own self-respect. Thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio today, and I'll see y'all next time. This sound good?